Hello, everyone. It's Michael Jacob with Unleashing Intuition Secrets. Joined once again by Ole Dammegard. He's been out there around the world, traveling Africa. Of course, he's a man of mystery, but he gets a lot of work done. So you've been looking at the JFK files, doing some great research. I see on your website, uh, lightonconspiracies.com. It's very, very interesting. I think I'm gonna have to get that. That looks very, very, very good. You gonna talk a little bit about that?
For sure. Especially now, because you might have noticed that I've been a bit quiet, at least on many shows. And the reason for that is that I found that it's so hard to trust information nowadays. I have no idea what is true and what is not true, what we're being fed, So since I have people listening to what I'm saying, I just felt, whoa, I need to be absolutely sure before I'm part of spreading things that could be absolutely part of deception.
Yeah.
So very confusing now with AI and the abilities of manipulating videos and audio. And I mean, now we have access to this technology. Just imagine the forces behind this dark agenda. How long have they have had access to this? Because normally they're like 30, 40, 50 years ahead. From the inside that when it goes public, then it's been around for a while. And so I find it very interesting, exciting, scary as hell when with the possibility that AI gives us. So anyway, I've taken a step back and just I thought I was stuck here in Indonesia for until we turn this world around, but instead I've been able to go to countries that are not sort of like in the exactly the same grip of this agenda. And because, like we mentioned before, I face a long prison term apparently in Sweden if I return for speaking out. There, between 18 and 22 years have been mentioned because I've been exposing these operations and especially criticizing NATO. So, which is what I do when I look into these dark things because that's what I find. So, anyway, so that's not a direction I go, but I was invited to South Africa. I want to tell you about that later on. But one of the things that I've done because I've been working just nonstop with other stuff, and one of the things that I've been really digging into is these JFK files because it's one of the biggest mysteries in the world. It's also, I would say, the overtake of one massive step forward for the powers that are still there. That day in Dallas in November '63, they took a massive step forward. And from that day, when they blew the head of JFK, they moved in on so many different fronts where they took over society on a global scale
Mhm.
with uh, the sex, drugs, rock and roll, with the epidemic of war, just spreading all over the world in a whole new, on a whole new level. So many coups d'etats, so many uh, leaders that have been assassinated, executed, not only in the U.S. but otherwise in the world as well. And then came 9/11, same power structure in the background, and then came Operation COVID, same power structure in the background. And so I always felt that JFK is so much more than just the death of one person and a political power taking over. It was sort of the cornerstones of this situation we are in today. So if we can expose that, we can also find the truth about so many other things that have happened. This is also why I was very happy to bring James Files on your show because he, as the shooter of the one that fired the final headshot on JFK, he is one of the key witnesses, I would suggest, to hundreds. If you look into his background and what he knows, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
If his testimonial would be spread big time, it would just like blow the lid up. Uh, so many things. So very happy that I could bring him on your show. Very grateful that you accepted that, and also that you have brought it to two steps forward now with Jim Scott also, where you're actually approaching Donald Trump saying, "Give this man amnesty. He's 83. Come on, the truth is what counts." And so that we can get it out there. So I think really, really interesting to see who dear Mr. Donald is, because if he is who he says he is, I mean, if I was him, I would just welcome James Files like this and say, "Yep, we're draining the swamp. Get it on, get it on, get it on," and give him the best treatment so that he stays healthy and can help us with the truth. So,
Yeah.
is this the case? Now we've been told also that he first in 2017 he released a major part of the so-called JFK files. And then now in 2025, just a few months ago, he released another 69,000 documents. So, and was hailed as a hero around the world for doing exactly that. So somebody like me who have dedicated the last, I don't know, godforsaken 40, 44 years or whatever, looking very deeply into the JFK assassination, that it should be Christmas Day for me. Like I would should just be jumping around in joy, saying, "Oh my God, finally, finally, free at last." No, not that, but the truth at last. Now we will be given the real truth because this is it. This all of it has been released now. So if you look at Wikipedia, it is said that there were somewhere between a quarter of a million to 300,000 documents that was withheld because of different reasons. The reasons we've been told is that, for one thing, that we couldn't handle the truth. Okay. Also, that the reason they didn't want to share this information was that it would expose the identity of many CIA operatives around the world that was in active operations or had been in active operations, and that this would expose them and put them at great danger. So that I can respect. But at the same time, also, over all of these years, what I've learned from people on the inside, like James Files, is that there are no paper trails. In these big operations, there are very, very, very little paper trails. So a quarter of a million documents, at least they were organized and in systemized and in categorized in files. And so absolutely not. There's been no, they're completely just in a jumble, in an you can take, the only thing that is there are numbers, 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 numbers. So you click on a number, it can be about James Earl's race fingerprint. The next one is about some CIA operative in Bulgaria. The next one is some CIA being promoted for blah blah blah. The next one is some Chinese delegation being sent. So I was like, what is going on here? When you look at the Warren Commission that followed the assassination, and if I'm correct, was completely part of the assassination itself as a cover up, as part of the cover up, which is the classical setup. The assassination is carried out by one power structure. The investigation is there as part of the assassination, who have been funded and supported by the people that did the assassination. And then this is then followed by commission after commission that is part of the cover up, cover up, cover up. So when did these files even get to become known? It was after the Oliver Stone movie JFK, which was released in 1991, I think, and which, if you ask me, I'm not such a great fan of Oliver Stone with other movies, but that one, oh my God, I think it is almost like a pristine piece of evidence. It is so to detail, it's so correct. I can only say from my research, it is absolutely spot on all the way through, even though the real conspiracy behind it is even bigger, is even bigger. But incredible that he brought it forward in that way. Yes, I know about producers, I know about funders, I know about connections here and there and everywhere. I don't know about these things. I know, just know that the movie itself, unbelievably well done. So that thing, up until that movie was released, and millions and millions of viewers all over the world got access to it, the JFK assassination was of interest, but not at all on the scale that it was after the movie. It just exploded globally, where people were just like blown away to the fact that apparently some very dark forces, and not this lone patsy, had carried this thing out. So a lot of pressure was put on agencies like the CIA, because there was very obvious that there was a massive, big, dirty finger of theirs involved in this whole thing. So in 1992, the president of the United States, George Herbert Walker Bush, he decided to release the first batch. And I find it highly interesting that George Bush Sr., who was actually the paymaster of one part of the assassins that was there that day, a major part of that assassination was carried out by a group called Operation 40 or Group 40. I know James Files, who was one of the first members of Group 40.
Mhm.
He's only talking about his own involvement, Chucky Nicoletti, Johnny Rosselli, and some other people there that day. And he believes, and I completely believe that this is what he sees as the truth, that there were only two shooters, Chucky and him, that day. He also spent the whole of 1964, more or less. He can't remember anything hardly of that year, because he was put through a lot of different processes, debriefing and MK Ultra methods and stuff like that. I think to erase a lot of the memories from that day. They could very easily have gotten rid of him, but he was such a great asset for George Bush Sr. And the CIA as well as an assassin. So they decided to keep him and instead erase his memory so that he will only remember very few things about this whole thing. And then he kept quiet for all of these years. It was only because he met Jesus in high security prison, and Jesus said, "Listen, Jim, you got another task. Sorry, but get your butt out of the bed, and you have to stand up for truth." Amazing, amazing. And for also that he did it for his friend Joe West, who died under mysterious circumstances, but that he had the courage, the enormous courage to stand up for truth, and which he has done from the mid 90s and onwards. And unbelievable, unbelievable. But on location that day were so many assassins. I mean, Dealey Plaza is a small little place. It was like the who's who of top assassins, mafia, CIA, also very strange elements from the Secret Service, from the Dallas Police, and so on. All of them were there, like a Michael Jackson concert where all the other top musicians are there as well. Boom, here it was just like that. But anyway, in 1992, President George Herbert Walker Bush, the paymaster of Operation 40, decided to release the first batch. And he said that it will take another 25 years before we can handle the truth, and the rest will be released. The reason they always put these like 30 years, very often it's 70 years. They say in 70 years you will be given the document. The only reason for that is by then their sorry asses will be 6 foot under, and they will be cannot be held responsible. This whole thing, national security, my butt, it's national security, their security. It's their security that they don't want us to see. So anyway, 1992, the first batch of 250,000 to 300,000 documents were released. Then in 2017, we have Donald Trump, who was draining the swamp, who said that he ordered another release of a large batch of JFK files, However, he said that for national security reasons, sorry, once again, we just can't give you all of it. I really want to, but no. So hundreds of thousands of pages were released, but it was incomplete. Then in 2021 and 2022 and 2023, President Joe Biden said, okay, fine, boom, here's another. There was like, I think there was about 14,000 records scheduled for disclosure in December 2022 and 2023. So another batch was given to us. And then in March, I think it was March 18, this year, President Donald Trump said, okay, guys, you are ready for it. You're grown ups now. Here is the truth, nothing but the truth. And boom, there you go. So excellent. After all of these years, we have been given the truth. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And Donald Trump in global media has been pumped up as this finally, somebody has the guts to stand up and give us this. So this should be amazing. The thing is, when you go through these documents, and when I've been taking a step back yeah, with many different interviews, I have not been sitting around playing with my belly button. I have been really doing a lot of work, and so I've gone through more or less 250,000 pages, every single one. I'm not finished yet, but I'm like uh, yeah, like 75, 80% I'm through it. I'm gonna go through all of it. And what I've done is I categorize them so that they're easy to access and understand what's actually going on. But at the same time, you also need to know what to look for, because once you get into this world, you start looking at these documents, and it's like, oh my God, top secret this, and signed by J. Edgar Hoover or Richard Helms, and there's a lot of like things that they pointed out and notes, and there it looks all like, whoa, this is like being in a spy movie. This is incredible. Mission Impossible, come into my life for sure. But then after a while, when you start getting used to reading these documents, you start seeing that, okay, there's, what is this? What is that? I don't understand. So you really need to know what to look for to see if there's anything of value. And that day in Dallas, I'm just going to list some names to look out for, because I've been focusing so many years on finding out on a street level who was there, who did what. And I know that even top researchers, we're just a handful that is really have dedicated their life to find out this thing. We are not, we don't agree ourselves among each other who was actually there, who was the shooters, how many were there. So you have to really give it to the people behind this operation, because it's really a masterpiece of how to carry it out. I mean, still after more than 60 years, we're confused. So anyway, I am willing to put my reputation, my whole blah 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 on the findings that I have found. I've really done my utmost. I've also been invited 3 times as a speaker to Dallas. I've also become friends, very close friend with Judith Berry Baker, the mistress of Lee Harvey Oswald, who is also indirectly hired by the CIA as part of an operation in New Orleans that was there with a series of super secret laboratories where they were creating a bioweapon as a way to assassinate Fidel Castro. And in that whole operation that was under the caring hands of Dr. Mary Sherman, we had people like Altan Oshner, the Dr. Altan Oshner, who was also part of weaponizing this alleged virus SV40 that is now being found in all of the vaccines, more or less all cancer cases around the world at autopsies. This SV40, I would strongly suggest that was the thing that was created in the late 50s and early 60s is what has created this mass epidemic of cancer cases in the billions around the world. This one is a real bad boy who was distributed through vaccines to the global population. Very nasty, very nasty. But there was also people involved in that without knowing that this was going to be the cause at all. They had no idea. They were like Judith Very Baker. She was very innocent and really thought that the monster and the enemy of the world was this individual called Fidel Castro. She had no idea that she was being manipulated and that this was going to be used in a completely different way. But you had Lee Harvey Oswald, who she fell in love with, who I think was her controller in this operation. Not that she's still to this day aware of it, but they fell in love. And it was almost like a Romeo and Juliet thing, where actually he was being prepared as the patsy without knowing it. But he found out about 5, 6 months before the assassination that they were actually setting him up. And then he, instead of disappearing and putting his family at risk and Judith at risk and so on, he decided to stay and try and do everything he could to expose the thing and save Kennedy, because he was a big supporter of Kennedy. So not a patsy, not a murderer, instead absolute heroic individual who actually sacrificed his life. But in that group in New Orleans also you had like Clay Shaw, this businessman who was very involved in Perm Index and other very dark stuff. You had Jack Ruby, you had Dave Ferry. I mean, for anyone who's interested in the JFK assassination, these names comes up all the time. But also there was this whole thing that was being set up to assassinate Fidel Castro. It went under different names. One of the names was Operation Mongoose. And a lot of weapons was being smuggled, and there were different training camps for assassins and groups and exiled Cubans to be used against Fidel Castro. But while they were doing it, while Operation 40 was created, they started using them also in other areas, in other South American countries where they took out different leaders and with assassinations, many manipulation, blackmail, you name it. But Operation 40 was being used, started to being used with George Bush Sr. as a paymaster, but also Dwight Eisenhower, Richard Nixon in the background. That were using it as a death tool in many different locations. And then it started being more and more. Also, the CIA went into bed with a mob, with Sam Giancana, Santos Traficante, Carlos Marcello, where they started using the mob also as a death tool, as a hit tool when they couldn't carry things out themselves. So there was this unholy alliance backed with big oil money, backed with money from the military industrial complex, and then with the CIA on top, with all the different angles to that whole thing. So when you look, I just want to go through a few names that are names that I know was there in Dallas that day. Every single name has taken me years and years and years to uncover. So we have Chucky Nicoletti. He was one of the shooters. He was in the Daltex building. Next to him was Tony Izquierdo. He was the spotter. He was from very close to Operation 40 as well, who was in the Daltex building. He is the very dark-skinned African American or exiled Cuban, who you can see stick out his head on one of the photos right after the shots have been fired. Chucky Nicoletti was a hitman under Sam Giancana and was there that day on order from Tony Acuerdo and Giancana as part of this operation as one of the shooters. In the same room was Johnny Rosselli, also who was supposed to be one of the shooters. He was the liaison between the Chicago mob, Hollywood, and CIA. So he was the guy that went in between. He and a lawyer called Robert Mayhew are in the background all the time doing the fiddling around with getting these operations together. Also in the same room when the shots were fired were a guy called Eugene Braden, or he's got different names, Jim Bradley, and so on. He was a mobster from LA, and he was sent that day to let these people into the Daltex building from the parking lot on the behind it, to the side of it, and let them into this room on the second floor that was owned by a mining company that, as if I'm correct, was controlled by the CIA and was being renovated at the time. At least that is what they said. So they had closed it off. So that's where they were let in that area. You had multiple shooters around the whole thing. And so if we go to the Texas School Book Depository on the sixth floor, where Lee Harvey Oswald is said to have been, there were three people observed up there when with rifles, and some people thought, oh, Secret Service is here, but they were there to make sure that people saw them, meaning that they saw somebody was there with a rifle so that they could blame Lee Oswald. And so I don't think that there were any shots fired from that floor, because you have a big window, no, sorry, a big tree in between the sixth floor and where the limo came. You could have fired when they came down Houston Street, but nobody shot there. But anyway, if I'm correct, the three people up there was Eladio Del Valle, a former Batista politician and also part of the Cuban Secret Service, the secret police in Cuba, and part of this whole thing to kill Kennedy. He was part of Operation Mongoose. He's been identified to me by Cuban intelligence agency. He fits in the exact profile, and he was also murdered on the very same day as Dave Ferry, when they started cleaning up the whole area before the House Select Committee of Assassinations, when they were being called to give testimony. Then so many people died. Second guy, Herminio Diaz Garcia, a dark-skinned Cuban who was also an expert marksman. He was an assassin on a very high level. He was part of trying to take out I think one or two of the leaders in Central America. He was part of many, many things, and then he died officially in 1966 in a shootout in Mexico City. But then later he appeared again. And this is one of the things, the best assassins are people that don't exist, like who are dead. But what often happens is that they officially die and then they reappear under another identity, but then can be used. Just like Jim Sutton died at birth and then became James Files later in life. Anyway, the third guy up on that floor, Richard Kane. Many people think it was Mac Wallace, the head assassin of Lyndon Baines Johnson, sorry. But I truly believe that the guy was Richard Kane, who was a Chicago police officer, but strongly connected with Sam Giancana, many different CIA operations, had direct connections also to Oswald in Japan and other places. And he was the guy who was up there. He was there with Sam Giancana that day. They both stayed at the Adolphus Hotel just down the road. And I believe the Adolphus Hotel is very central in this whole thing also. I believe that's where the headquarters for this operation was. So these people also they were seen on the sixth floor of the Texas School Book Depository, but then they just disappeared because they did a very detailed investigation on how did Oswald get down from the sixth floor. And because the elevator, there was a lift there, the power was cut just 1 minute before the assassination. I think completely by design, the power was cut, so he couldn't use the lift. And there were people walking in the stair, going up and down the stairs. And they didn't pass there, according to the witnesses. So how did these three people get out of the building after leaving the rifle and the empty shells there, pointing at the Patsy Lee Oswald? I would strongly suggest that what they did was they abseiled down on the inside of the shaft, of the elevator shaft. I asked James Files if Operation 40 was trained in that, and he said yes, for sure. They even did it from coming down from helicopters, just like you see the Black Ops or SWAT teams like you, Michael. I'm sure you have been doing that as well. And that is how they got down. That's why the power was cut so that the elevator couldn't be used. And then you see witnesses saw these three people coming out on the backside of the Texas School Book Depository, where two of them were picked up in a car, I believe was driven by David Sanchez Morales. The car was most probably Ruth Payne's car, and then taken off going down Houston Street up towards the Cabana Motor Hotel. I think that is the same car that turned around then, came back, and then picked up Lee Oswald. This is where Roger Craig, the deputy sheriff, saw him being picked up. And then what happened then after that, I'm not sure how he got to his the place where he stayed. But anyway, you had Roscoe White, a Dallas police officer, who was one of the shooters, according to himself, who died. He was being killed in a fire, a set up fire. But anyway, according to his son and according to things that was found on in his possessions, I truly believe that Roscoe White was one of the shooters. But his son and other people believed that he was behind the picket fence because that is what he said. The thing is with Dealey Plaza is that it's designed in a very unusual way. It's like a pyramid shape, and the whole layout is very Freemasonic. Also, this is the location of the very first Freemasonic lodge in Dallas. I don't think that is a coincidence that they chose this place. Um, Also, there's already an obelisk there, and the whole thing is Dallas. When you look at the design and the towers, and phew, so Freemasonic. But anyway, I believe that he was behind the picket fence, but on the south side of Dealey Plaza, which is identical to the north side. So many people said that no, Jimmy Files couldn't have been the shooter behind the picket fence because it was Roscoe White. I think Roscoe White was on the other side, and on that side, we had the pilot Tosh Plumley, who's also part of Operation 40, who was flying in what he called an abort team that day. And he was right there seeing when the motorcade came down Elm Street, when a shot was fired behind him. And they even felt the gun smoke and all these things. I think what they heard and saw was the shot fired by Roscoe White. Speculation, but that's what I think. Then we have the so-called black dog or badge man. His name was Lucien Sarti. He was a hitman from the Marseille mob, who was being brought in by Carlos Marcello, the mafia boss down in New Orleans, and he was supplying this shooter for this guy. Very tricky individual to pin down, very skilled, very fearless, and being used in many top level assassinations as well. He had a black police uniform on, a black Dallas police uniform on that day. That's why he was called Black Dog or Badge Man, also because you can see the uniform. E. Howard Hunt, who was one of the architects of this assassination, pointed him out in his deathbed confession that he did to his son, St. John, who I had the great pleasure of becoming friends with as well. I've become close to quite a few of the people very close to this whole thing. Another guy on location was Frank Sturgis, or Frank Fiorini, later one of the Watergate burglars, who, according to James Files, was standing on the grassy knoll, but a bit further down to the left of him, in a green bomber jacket. But that was before the assassination. Then he just has not been seen. He's not on any photos that I can see in Dallas. People have not pointed him out. But there are some of the shooter positions where I don't know who was there, and one of them is down the storm drain, where you see there's like a manhole just to the right of the stairs coming down the grassy knoll. Somebody was down there, I believe, firing a shot at the very same second as Chucky Nicoletti hit the head. When the limo stopped, more or less stopped, Chucky Nicoletti fired one shot that threw the head, JFK's head, forward a little bit. That's where James Files says that he had aimed in on JFK's right eye, but that the head was thrown forward a little bit, just a hundredth of a second before, and so James Files' shot hit in the here on the side of the head instead of in the eye. But when you look at, uh, there's been different data. I don't know how to say, but there's some data experts that have gone through the whole thing of what his skull really looked like, and they say that it's very obvious that one shots come from down and from below to the right, and I think from the storm drain. When the limo stopped, all the shooters were aiming in on his head, and I believe three shots were fired, and this is also what made Kennedy's head just blow up, literally. So we have, sorry, we have. I'm just going to go through. There's a lot of names, but I hope bear with me, because this is what it's taken me all of these years to identify these people. And a lot of people are very, very confused around this thing. So I hope it can be of value. Behind the picket fence, we have James Files, who had in great detail described what happened that day. Okay. He also said that why he was there, General Sheffield, Ed Lansdale came over, spoke to him. This is when you when you see the railroad guy that was up in the tower, the railroad tower. He saw two people behind the fence talking, smoking cigarettes and so on before the shooting took place. That's, if I'm correct, James Files and Edward Lansdale. Edward Lansdale is also on the photo with the three traps. He's the guy that are meeting them, and who was identified by Fletcher Prouty, who knew him very well, and who was there that day as a coordinator of the whole thing. There were at least three different coordinators of the different teams. Lansdale, E. Howard Hunt. You had also Jack Ruby, as far as I know, was also one of the people that was taking care of this whole thing. Then you have when the limo came around the corner, there was the so-called umbrella man. The umbrella man was, even though it was sunny that day, was standing flapping with his umbrella, looking very odd on this sunny day just before the shots. And many speculations have been made about, oh, was it a weapon? Was it a secret thing? Was it a sign? What was this umbrella man doing, and who was he? If I'm correct, his name was Roy Hargraves, Operation 40, and his task was to just stand and show the cross point for the different shooters so that they could fire at the same time. They even had made yellow markings on the sidewalk, what they call the death zone, so that the shooters would fire within the yellow markings, meaning that it could be blamed on one shooter, because you couldn't have like that the shots were coming like boom, 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 boom. Then nobody would buy that it was a one-man job. But if there was like boom, 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 something like that, when everybody was firing at the same time, they could blame it on echo in between the buildings, that no, there was only three shots fired, you got confused, whatever. So this was the reason, and I believe the reason he stood there with the umbrella, I'm not even sure that he knew that that was what he was doing, because it put him in a very dangerous position. But he was placed there, I believe, to mark the crossing point. Here, start shooting. And also with the umbrella high up so that it could be seen from all directions. Then the guy next to him, a dark-skinned individual who is stepping out in the street in front of the limo, like waving, but also has like a walkie-talkie in his back pocket. His name, Felipe Vidal Santiago. His He was part of Operation 40 of this super secret team of assassins, and he was later under the fake identity of Charles Morgan. He was traveling around in the world recruiting assassins on locations for jobs in down in Africa, and also he was in Sweden in 1985 trying to recruit assassins in Sweden for the hit of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme in February of 1986. So we have another guy up on the grassy knoll when people were running up the hill trying to get up to where they saw that somebody had fired a shot there. There was this Secret Service guy who was showing his identity and was stopping people, saying, "No, no, go back." With, if I'm correct, his name was Bernard Barker. Sorry, Bernard L. Barker, and he was very closely associated with Operation 40. He was a close friend of E. Howard Hunt. He was also later one of the Watergate burglars. I'm just going to go through some more names also. If you know about the JFK's case, I really hope that this can be of great value to you. If you're not really well read in this area, please bear with me. There was one guy, Antonio Veciana, who was there, I think, as a coordinator that day. He was not any of the shooters or whatever, but you had you have to look also at the Secret Service part of it, because they were completely setting him up. And the driver, William Greer, behaved very, very odd, to say the least. Instead of stepping on it when the first shots were fired, he made the limo come to a almost or full stop, and that's where the real kill took place. And then he sped off. So very, very odd. And also, there's footage of this manipulated Zapruder movie. Very, very hard to know what is real and what is not on that, because they manipulate it, especially with the background and the car has been moved, and yeah, odd things are happening. But it looks like that he turned around. The driver turned around, was watching to see if JFK was hit or not, and that he had a gun in his right hand and fired a shot. According to William Cooper, who was this former operative who also blew the whistle on 9/11, later was killed. He went forward and said that William Greer had used a special weapon with some turquoise poison and fired a shot. It is possible. It is very possible, because the main thing that day was that JFK would not get out alive. That was it. That was it. So it is possible that he also turned around and fired this shot, because shots were coming from all over the place. How they controlled this guy, how they got these people to sit in the same car with all of these bullets coming in from different directions, I can only say possible mind control, or I don't understand. But William Greer has also a different background than most Secret Service individuals, and as far as I know, hadn't been working that long in that detail, but was sort of called in quite close to when this happened. There's another radio operator on location also. His name was Jim Hicks. You see in photos he was walking around with a walkie-talkie in his back pocket. He was later put away in a mental institution. Like many of these people, either ended up dead or put away and just shut down. We also had I mentioned these three tramps after the assassination. The police went over to the boxcars, and the train was stopped by Lee Bowers. And so instead of these people that were inside the boxcar that were supposed to be transported out of the location right after the shots were fired, they were taken by the Dallas police. And you will see that they're being escorted to the police station in a very casual way, like the police are not on guard. This is right after the president had been assassinated, so they should have really been like on high alert with adrenaline. All that. You see the exact opposite. And so the three tramps, if I'm correct again, there was the old tramp, a a small guy that many people think was E. Howard Hunt, but his real name was Chauncey Holt. He was a CIA operative, a master of fakery, a forgery. He was like a really interesting individual, circus artist and pilot, and you name it, and who used to work for the mob, but also for the CIA. And he was there that day to deliver the Secret Service badges and other stuff, forged stuff, for the assassination. He left that in a pickup truck in the parking lot right before that. He had no idea, according to what he said himself, that there was going to be a hit. That was not what he was. He didn't know it. And when you look at these operations, very often they're completely compartmentalized. That every single person only knows their little part, nothing else. Then we have the tall guy in the middle. His name was Charles Harrelson. He was an assassin from Texas, who in the end was put away until he died for a murder of a judge down in San Antonio, I believe. He was actually the father of Woody Harrelson. And this is quite interesting that then Oliver Stone used Woody Harrelson, of all people, for Natural Born Killers and these other things. But anyway, I'm sure it's a big tragedy for Woody that to be connected like that with his father. And then the front person of these three tramps was a guy that went under the name of Frenchie, also Carlos Montoya, or his real name was Charles Frederick Rogers. He was also an assassin, very, very brutal guy, who I believe, if I've been correctly informed, was actually the controller or handler of James Earl Ray, the patsy to become of the Martin Luther King assassination, while he was being prepped as a patsy. He was one of the people that was doing that was Charles Frederick Rogers. He later disappeared, and when he disappeared, it was discovered that his parents had been murdered and chopped up and put in a fridge, and he is being blamed for that. In the world of the mob and the CIA, very hard to know if somebody did that to his parents and to scare him off or whatever. But he disappeared and was later, I believe, seen down in Central America, where he was working the School of the School of Americas, which was school education for assassins, torturers, and so on. Very brutal guy. Then in the back, we also had David Sanchez Morales, as I said before, Operation 40, very, very ice cold killer, who was on the corner of Houston and Elm Street. You can see he's parked the car on the wrong side of the road, and he's up at a telephone pole, a light post, looking at the assassination. If you zoom in on this very famous photo, you will see that's David Sanchez Morales. He was later part of going down with Felix Rodriguez and James Files to Bolivia, where they found and executed Che Guevara on the orders of George Bush Sr. and others. And he was also at the Ambassador Hotel in 1968 when RFK was assassinated. He was part of that operation, and many, many, many others. Very brutal individual. In the background of this, I would strongly suggest that David Atlee Phillips, the handler of Lee Oswald, but also the handler of Gary Marlowe, the shooter of the J.D. Tippit, and James Files. This is David Atlee Phillips, very, very central in this assassination. Also the chief of the CIA station in Mexico City. Mexico City also very central in the preparation for this setup of the patsy. You had Lyndon B. Johnson in the background, who was about to face trial. He was just about to be taken to court that day when JFK was taken out for so many counts of illegal stuff, including 8 murders that his head killer, Mac Wallace, had carried out for him. One of them being Lyndon's own sister, who was an alcoholic and who was just a big mouth, and they decided to shut shut her up. Another guy was William Harvey. He was a high up CIA coordinator. He was called Wild Bill. He was in the background big time when it came to the creation of Operation 40, and also a variation of Operation 40 that went under different names. One of the names they used was Amos, AMAMOS. Another one was ZR Rifle, the CR Rifle Project. There's also called something called Operation Zipper, which is some newly found documents that shows if they are true, if these are actual authentic documents that shows the people that were in the top of this operation, and this is where these people appear. Alan Dulles, the head of the CIA, who's also, when you look into so much of the dark things that has happened in the world after the Second World War, he is a key person. He was fired by JFK, together with Richard Bissell, the military guy, and also Cabell, General Cabell. These were fired. These were holy cows, but JFK fired them, and this really started them sort of going for JFK. And later also, Alan Dulles, suddenly from being fired, he was a major part of the Warren Commission, covering the whole thing up. Then we have George Bush Sr., like I said before, as a young CIA operative, the paymaster, the guy that funneled the funds into Operation 40, and then used that team of assassins his whole career. I mean, it's unbelievable where these people have turned up. Other people like Ted Shackley in the background. Also, I believe he was on location in Dallas that day. He's the guy that is almost being arrested by the Dallas police. If you look at his face and Ted Shackley, the blonde ghost, very, very, very similar. This guy who later became the chief of the Western Hemisphere after David Atlee Phillips, the coordinator for these operations for the Western Hemisphere. I mean, these are big, big boys. He was also later in Operation Phoenix and in Vietnam, where many of them was transported to carry out the things there. And then, yeah, you have Operation Condor in South America and so on, where death is sort of the common denominator. And then, of course, sorry, am I rambling on? Go for it.
No, it's good. So you're putting a lot of pieces together. It's amazing you have. I mean, your memory is like better than most people for like decades upon decades of information. It's like incredible.
Well, I'm just saying that you need to know what to look for, because, like,
Right.
what, otherwise, there are thousands of Spanish Cuban names, there are thousands of operatives, there are thousands. So if you don't know exactly who to look for, you won't have a chance to know what. So I'm just going to go through a few more. And there was the Novo Sampol brothers. That there was one of the members, the only female member of Operation 40. Her name was Marita Lawrence. She said that there were two cars coming from Miami loaded with guns that day, and in that car were the Novo Sampol brothers, Pedro Diaz-Lanz, another high-level exile Cubans, Frank Sturgis, and some other people that were carrying there. So the Novo Sampol brothers were in Dallas. I have not been able to identify them on location. We have Gary Hemming, also another operative who is very close to that, also present in Dallas. Orlando Bosch, who is also called Dr. Death and who carried out hundreds and hundreds of so-called terror attacks, including bombing civilian airliners and stuff during these years, and then pardoned by George Bush Sr. of all people, together with Luis Posada Carilles, another super terrorist, also under the wings of George Bush Sr. through over many years. Anyway, so these are the people to look out for. Like especially like James Files. There should be loads about him. There should be loads about Chauncey Holt. There's two shooters I haven't pointed out: Walter Tabinski, Clyde Forshaw. Very unknown names to most people. But I was thinking if I could just share screen with you just for a little second. I'm going to show
Sure.
one of the shooters that not a lot of people are aware of at all. So can I share screen on this one? I do not know how to do that.
Yeah, down at the bottom it says present.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay, got it.
click on that and then share screen. And at the top, when you hit share screen, there'll be a window. Click on the window and click on what you want to share.
Window. Okay, boom.
You got it.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had the one of the first shots fired hit JFK in the throat. It was a tiny little hole, and it didn't went through the neck, meaning that it was the it was not like a high-powered rifle or anything like that. That is what makes JFK throw up his hands like this, according to a witness that I have about 100 hours of recorded phone calls with. Absolutely incredible memory, photographic memory, just like Judith Berry Baker. Her name was Haley Otis, and she was the cousin of a man called Clyde Forshaw, and or a close relative to Clyde Forshaw, and um, his cousin Walter Tabinski. And according to her, these people have been responsible for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of murders and slaughters and all kinds of things that was connected to the CIA, but also the mob, both in the US and in China. They were like doing the wet work for so many. And she was the one that pointed out this shooter to me that for some reason, very few, I haven't seen any other JFK researcher pointing this guy out, and he's so obvious once you see him. So please look out for a guy on the grassed area. He's standing in a shooting position with a small little gun, and then a big bulletproof vest on. Who would bring a big bulletproof vest on? I ask you, on a sunny day in November, and once there's a cut in the Zapruder movie, just when the limo comes in between this Stammen's Free Highway, whatever the name was, and then he comes out. So you can't really trust how they're synchronized. But look, this guy standing only a few feet away, and once he fires the shot, he just very relaxed lets his hands drop to the side. So I'm just gonna play it to you, and you can see for yourself. There he is. Boom. Boom.
It's not playing on our end.
It's not playing.
No.
I'll try again. Let me see. Present. Share screen. Screen. Window. Can you see the slide itself?
Yes.
Oh, come on. Can you see it moving now?
No, it's not moving, unfortunately.
Okay. Anyway, unfortunately, that is a. Maybe if I show as just a static slide. Present. Share screen. Share screen. Window. Boom. Can you see that?
Yes.
Can you see the slide itself with the two photos on them?
Yeah, we see those.
Okay, so can you see my mouse here?
Yep.
Okay, so if you look at that arrow, this
Hmm.
guy is, his name is Walter Tabinski. He is the guy that went to that was taking photos of outside the embassy in Mexico City, pretending to be Oswald. You can see that in the JFK movie. They show the photos of this guy that has been identified as Lee Oswald, but it's very clearly not. And they're saying this, who is this guy in Mexico City? This is a massive big mystery. I tell you, the mystery is solved. His name, Walter Tabinski, lives in Toronto if he's still alive. He was just like James Files. He was born into one of these programs for assassins, from a very early age,
Yeah.
trained as an assassin from Operation Paperclip with these scientists. So you had both him, Walter Tubinski, and his cousin Clyde Forshaw, who is the shooter between Abraham Zapruder and Batchman. There's a car that has been reversed out right next to it with his elbow on the roof of the car is Clyde Forshaw. No, nobody's shooting from that side except James Files, as far as I know. But there are shooters there as backup because this is the thing. There was not supposed to be a shot fired from that direction because it completely the wrong direction. So James Files followed ordered, but really messed it up. And which is something I'm very grateful because that was the thing that got me started. That it came from completely the wrong direction. But anyway, can you see the photos of the guy outside the embassy
Yep.
and where he's standing? Right after the shots have been fired, this guy very calmly walks across the street. If you look at the photo to the left, can you see that bulletproof vest?
Yeah.
That
That's crazy.
that is not discreet. But
No.
he knew what was going. I mean, he knew that he was in the line of fire. He just very calmly walked across the street and had a bicycle there. That he took the bicycle and just took off. This is
Wow.
according to himself, bragging to Haley Otis, who, if you go to my website, there you will find all the hundred, about at least 100 hours of phone calls about this thing with Jim Fetzer. She called him, and we recorded these phone calls, and it's unbelievable the detail that she has, like a photographic memory. So I very much believe her, and unfortunately, I'm not sure if she's with us anymore because she was very, very fearful of Clyde Forshaw and Walter Stabinsky. We even went out live naming these two mass murderers because they were outside her apartment and she was freaking out. So that time we managed to stop it, but I don't know since then. Anyway, so let's go into the files. Don't stop sharing that. I really recommend you, when you look at the Zapruder movie, look above the limo. Everybody's looking at JFK. Look above, and you will see. Whoop! That's where one of the shooters are.
Wow.
So I have, do you know, like, if there is 250,000 pages, I'm not sure. These numbers keep doing like this. I don't know what is true. Like now, recently, was it 62 or 69,000 uh, pages released? What I know is that they are in PDF uh, uh, format. So it's like one PDF file can be 40 pages long, one can be three, one can be one. So to add all of these pages together, I don't know if it ends up in 250. I just know that I've spent months going through them, like scrolling through, scrolling through, scrolling through. I'm telling you, what other geek than this one would do something like that? And this is what the people that are releasing these things are not expecting, that somebody would take the time, months, to do something like that. I think so.
Yeah, I think
So
you're right.
So what I've done, I just did a webinar. Please go to my website, lightonconspiracies.com. I go through a lot of these things in great detail. And what I've taken, since there's no index or anything that shows anything of any kind of organization, only numbers like that, I have made many, 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 many folders, And so anything that had to do with Lee Oswald in Mexico City, I put in that one. Anything that had to do with David Atlee Phillips, I put in that one. Anything that had to do with the Howard Hunt, I put in that one. It's Frank Sturgis and so there should be, let me just see, I have the numbers here somewhere. Okay, so in total, I think there's about 12,000 folders. No, sorry, 20. Yeah, if you see the slideshow, yeah, that's the one. Please sign up there. Also, what I give you access to are all of these files, but organized. So,
Wow.
but in a Dropbox account, there's so many of them. So when I have been looking through these, I have, like I said, I organize anything that is connected to any of these people that I know is of interest to this. I put in these folders that you will get access to if you sign up here. But out of these 12,000, something like that, files, which is officially like 250 pages, there is about 85% at least that, if you ask me, has zero, I mean, zero connection to the JFK assassination. We're talking like eight, eight Bulgarian agents that has disappeared in 1953. You tell me, 1953 Bulgarian refugees, what? Why is that so secret? All of these has been kept from us for like many of them 60 years. So you should have like a filtration of the stuff. Like, no, this is just too much information. We can't give it up. Oh God, no, they're not ready for it yet. Every single one of these documents should be of high value. Am I right or am I right, Michael?
Yeah,
Please,
absolutely.
yeah. It's like everyone should be like, oh my God, I mean, oh my God. Here we have blank pages. Many documents are there multiple times. We're talking like
Hmm.
8, 12 times the same, but with different numbers. We're talking about some documents, the copy is so bad you can't read anything. Many of them are uh, communication between the House Select Committee where they're requiring files. We would like to see these files. Yeah, what? Why is this document there? It says nothing. It's just that we require that file. Yeah, fine. Then there are cover sheets, and in this cover sheet it says the files for Blitzer, but these are of interest, but they don't appear. Instead, we have these one. You have like agents being promoted for medals. You have like wages, this guy was in 1978. 78 was given like $243 for a bus ticket in Caracas. It's like, what? We have agents in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. We have like from Dubai in 1970, I don't know when it was from. We have like, they have, as far as I know, maybe I'm not aware of how that could be connected to Dallas in November 63. I don't get it at all. At least 85% is just bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Some of them, the quality is just ridiculous and it's really tiresome for the eye because it's so hard to read. There's no connection. And then you have connections like with people that were there that day, like Frank Sturgis, Freddie Lugo, um, these shooters that I told you about, David Atlee Phillips, E. Howard Hunt, all of the. So in these ones, there are golden nuggets of especially connections. You know, like I'm pointing out, like Roy Hargraves, the Umbrella Man, Felipe Vidal Santiago next to him. Another guy was Jose Perdomo, who was not there that day, but was he was one of the top assassins, one of the highest ranking officers of Operation 40, and the assassin of John Lennon. Okay, so in the same document, when they're asking for, we want this, suddenly you have like David Atlee Phillips, Roy Hargraves. Jose Perdomo, these types of things. Whoa, whoa, whoa! How can you see? It's sort of like indirect connections like this that have been okay. And then another guy that was really, really heavy on these operations, Rolando Masferrer, a former Cuban politician who became top assassin. He is just all over the place. And you see in these documents, connected to Johnny Rosselli. Oh, they did that. Okay, then his car was blown up just before they killed Rosselli as well and chopped him up and put him in a barrel. So there's these connections, but you need to know exactly what to look for. If not, you will drown in information. So I ask you, is this the release of the real truth, nothing but the truth, and so on? Zero. I have found zero documents that has to do with Dealey Plaza on that very day. Maybe my memory is wrong. Okay, let's say only a handful that has any connections to what any witnesses saw that day, any actual action on that day. I found zero, zero in 250,000 pages. Come on. Is that just by mistake? Or just like with the Warren Commission, is somebody burying us with documents and then headlines? Look at us. We're releasing it. We're giving it to you. We, this temple of truth and open transparency, we are giving it to you, population, you lower level individuals who are not worthy of knowing. Now we have served it to you. We have done our incredible job. They've done fuck all. There's nothing. So what does that mean? What is that? If you can't find evidence in it, that is evidence of something else. That is evidence of a designed document terror attack on the population. Bury them in papers. That is what lawyers do as well. If you get up against these bad boys, they will just bury you in documents. This is exactly, I would suggest, what we see here. And so, am I suggesting that you should not look into this? Absolutely not. Look into it. And if you can find, since I put in all of these folders, including one called the JFK joke folder, which is where 85% of all of this, there's about 200,000 pages at least with no connection at all. I ask you, please, if you go through it, if you find anything of value that I have overlooked, send it to me and said, listen, you messed up on this one. I am very grateful. But I will reply to you saying, yes, I know that document, but that is the third or fourth copy of that document that I found. So that's why it's in the absolute junk folder there. Because if you look in that folder, you will find the copy of it. Or I made a mistake. In that case, hit me in the head with a baseball bat. I've done what I tried, but I got very tired at times. So there's one that keeps coming up, Israel. People say this connects to Israel. I mean, I am not a defender of Israel. On the contrary, Benjamin Netanyahu and people, super terrorists like that, with their fingers everywhere in dark stuff. I would really like, whoa, if I found anything. As far as I know, there's only very, very few documents. I mean, I still have like 2,000 documents to go through. So maybe that's in these documents. I can only say that I only found 2 or 3 that had direct connection with Israel. One of them, and I think that's the one that people are pointing at, saying Israel was behind it. I say, I'm sure that they were in the background, for sure, as so many other in this dark, very dark power structure, major part of it. But direct connections that is proven by documents, I've only found one, and that is with James Jesus Angleson, who was a big shot, very low-key individual, big shot in the CIA. And this is from 1953, where it says that he is head of something called special, blah, 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 special operations, something like that. Look in the folder Israel, please. I put exclamation marks on them if they are greater value. That is the one that I marked like that. And in it, it says that he is working together with Israeli intelligence. But in the very same document, it also said that he works with intelligence agencies in France, in Italy, and sometimes with the Vatican. So for sure, but that's not direct proof, and there's nothing new under the sun when it comes to that, because anyone who's been involved in really looking into these things knows that Mossad and CIA are like sisters, or they're being, just different sides of the same coin, different name on the mob on the side. This is why it's super confusing, because like what is what? And that's part of the design. So they're heavily invested in each other, helping each other, changing all kinds of horrible stuff. So nothing new there. But I have not find anything direct, sort of, no smoking gun saying you. Not at all. Not at all. There's in this info, I can only say of value, of real value, in this 250,000 documents, I found, I don't want to say zero, but 0.5% of any value whatsoever when it comes
Wow.
to solving the crime. I find that mind blowing, because then you have to ask yourself, if any president would be sort of interested in the truth. If I got into a position in the White House, I would be surrounded by people who knew what they were doing, also historians and people who have been looking into these things because they wanted to know the truth. Okay, I come into the White House, I take my best expert and I say, okay, listen, I want this to be released to the people, but please help me. You know what to look for. Go through the whole thing. Make sure that there are no active agents and stuff that can be put in danger if we release that. But otherwise than that, this should be given to the people because that is their right. That's what they deserve. You go through it. Let me know. Anyone with any knowledge of what actually went down that day would say that, but this is, what the hell is this? What 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 has Bulgarian refugees to do with anything? What is this thing about Congo? What is this thing? The only thing that has been really interesting for me is like in some of these documents, you got the code names and the real name of like Amlash, who was a very, very famous assassin who was being used officially against Castro. Now we know his real name, Amwip, JM Wave, all of these code names, QJ Win, that never before I've seen the real names of some of them. And here they are, boom, boom, boom. Thank you so much. And also how they're connected to like the assassination of DM in Vietnam, or Patrick Lumumba in Congo, how they carried them out, how they were transporting them in, paying for their plane tickets, and exactly how it was done. These things, value, JFK, zero value. And why are they labeled the JFK files if they're not connected? So once again, who were the presidents who gave it to us? Now we have dear Mr. Donald, who sort of had given it to us amazingly after only 60 years. We are now grown up and adult enough to handle this thing. So you have to ask yourself again, psychological operation or somebody who really wants to share the truth? You make up your mind. I know what I think.
Yeah, there's nothing there because the CIA basically cleans like you're talking about. Uh, yeah, I've talked to James Files like we talked about, and I know you a couple of years ago were saying that there's these assassination teams that travel all over the world, and I was like, what is that? And now after talking with James Files, and now with your reveal, just in this show alone, everybody should go. These guys have been used in corruption. We don't even know the level of terrorism that these guys did all around the world. I can tell you. I've been giving little snippets. Wow.
It's on a level that is, phew. I tell
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
if James Files were given the stage,
Please.
you could have like an 8 hour per day mind-blowing exposure, like for 3 weeks straight, I think. When it
Easily,
comes when
easily.
it comes to guru, I mean, he has been involved
Yes.
in, it's unbelievable. And you say, but come on, come on. It was his job. It was
Yeah.
his job. He was
For
never,
decades.
for decades, he was very busy, and he was trained from diaper age as an
Yeah.
assassin. He
Yeah.
was never given a normal education. He was prepared for this job. He was very good at it till this very day. I don't want to mess with this guy, even if he's in a wheelchair or whatever. I tell you, he can just kill you with the handle of the wheelchair, I'm sure. This,
Sure. Yeah.
this dude is not to play around with. And he was surrounded by a handful, there are not many, of the same caliber.
Oh yeah.
And they have been used by people in power like George Bush Sr. and other of these people that have come to power with the help of these individuals. George Bush Sr. is a massive, massive example of that. He came from a family that got into the position they were, among other ways, like his grandfather was the guy that was behind the Zimmerman telegram, the thing, this whole fake thing that got the US into the World War One. Then Prescott Bush, his father, who was also the guy that groomed Nixon and got the whole thing there, him into position together with Dwight Eisenhower. He was the guy that funneled the money into the Hitler war machine with the Dulles brothers as the lawyers, and ITT, IBM, all of these things into prepping the Hitler war machine. Okay, we're backing with the Swedish family that I keep mentioning all the
Yeah.
time, that was working directly to them. Okay, it was, he was even tried as for I think for treason, Prescott Bush. Then comes Boy George, no, not Boy George, George Bush Senior, but as a young asset, CIA asset, with his Zapata oil and all of these things, goes in and is part of creating Operation 40, Group 40, Amot, Amos. And if you ask James Files, George Bush was always there. He was the best. He was whatever they needed, wherever they were in the world. One phone call within 24 hours. You need a C-130. You need like napalm bombs. You need this. You need C4 explosive. They would deliver it. I'm in a horrible situation. Don't worry, I'll get you out of it. Pardoned, transported out, released, all of that. George Bush Sr. was the guy. But George Bush surrounded himself with these assassins, that one of them came up to become the head of the CIA. You had Barry Seal also involved in many, many operations, the Iran Contra scandal, George Bush Sr. in the background, the assassinations of so many people around the world, the Chilean coup d'etat with Salvador Allende, James Files were there, Michael Townley were there, the murder of I forgot his name, Pablo Neruda, the poet, even the poet, Michael Van Townley came in as a doctor, poisoned him, poof. You had the Robert Smith murders in South Africa. You had the alleged murder of Ola Palme in Sweden. You had Uwe Barschel in West Germany. You had so many different hits around the world. James Files, he says, stuff like he just mentioned, like the Blue Train massacre in South Africa. Look into that. I can't even find it. Do you know the like when they blew up Orlando Lettier, this Chilean politician at Embassy Row in Washington D.C. James Files were the one delivering the explosives from the Dominican Republic, a mining company there, and then Michael Van Townley and other people connected to Operation 40 blew him up in the car. The Watergate burglary, James Files was sitting in the car outside. That whole thing, we have the official narrative with Deep Throw and all that absolute bullshit. It was a setup to destroy Richard Nixon and shut him up because he was not reliable anymore and he knew too much about the Cuban thing, meaning the JFK assassination. He was from having been an asset as a somebody said who said yes sir, no sir. He got completely off track and they wanted to shut him up. George Bush Sr., oh my God. Yeah, the Balloon Train Massacre, I still don't know so much about. I would very much like, um, and I just want to say the Walter Tupinski, never ever heard his name before. He was the guy that I showed in the khaki clothes who fired that shot. But I asked the chat GTP, has anyone ever, except me and Jim Fetzer, pointed at Walter Tupinski? And then I found that in Primary Target, which is the book that Pamela and James Files has written, that he's mentioned there. So I really wondered, whoa, please, please, because I asked James a while ago specifically, did you know anyone called Clyde Forshaw or Walter Sabinsky? And he said no. But I also know that James is very loyal, and if people are still alive, he will never give them up. He's
Right.
never ratted. He's never exposed anyone. I mean, he's done horrendous violent acts of like that. But when it comes to his courage and his moral principles, oh my God, I mean, he was tortured to death. He survived it, but he was left as for dead
In
and
a
did not
dumpster.
give it up. It's like, I mean, I fear going to the dentist. Come on. This is like, it's on a whole different level of
Oh yeah.
yeah, so please, dear Mr. Donald, when once you're finished with your hair for the day, the hairdo, once that's done, let Jim Files give testimony. Let the all of these things come out in the world. Let it help heal the world. Let it help us understand what actually happened, what actually took place in many of these different places, where we've been deceived. I mean, the perfect CIA operation is something that goes down without us even knowing that anything happened. So how many of these natural deaths, how many of these coup d'etats that or power overtakes or rigged elections or whatever it is has taken place, and we haven't even understood that anything went down.
Hmm.
So please let him come on center stage, and it would be amazing for us, the normal people. It would, and it could be a major part in cracking the deep state.
Big time. I agree. It would tie a lot of countries into this ring of evil too, and I think we'd be very surprised how many are involved.
And at the same time, how few. This is the thing: how few have been able to carry out so much darkness.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is. This is what gets to me. Is like, oh, the world is evil. People say, oh, they're so, or is it, or are we having like a cancer growth of very active individuals or power structures that are just deceiving us and are using people like James Files?
yes.
He says, according to himself, he has about 1,000 lives on his 1,000. That is one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. So many times, very precisely chosen targets for a political reason or whatever you call that political reason. I call it their own desires. Okay, so let's say that take away half of it, that could be his boasting or whatever. If you think that, I don't think that at all, but many times it's been in war zones or in shootouts or whatever. Okay, it could be mobster hits, and so take away that. But let's say we're down to 500, but 500 specific targets by the agency. Let's say 300, but specific targets. 300 of people in very important positions that have been neutralized,
Yeah.
taken out of the game. That's just him. Then you have Clyde Forshaw, Walter Tabinski. They are also, according to Haley Otis, their cousin, also responsible for about 1,000 deaths each. These
Gee.
people have been very active, very
Wow.
active.
Wow.
So just that tiny little group, you speak to Chip Tatum, who was the head of, he was the commander of George Bush Sr.'s private hit team Pegasus.
Hmm.
He says that the world of assassins is so small, so small. It's just a handful because you need a very special mindset and capability and capacity to carry these things out. So we're looking at a very small handful. He's talking, so it sounds like maybe under 100. I don't know. I get an impression that it's even fewer. Then you look at the power structure. Who is really in charge? Is it thousands of people arguing, or are we going down into like smaller and smaller and smaller, 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 smaller? Boom. So when you look at what's really behind, we're up at the against the Wizard of Oz. We think that they're so massive, that they're so powerful. You pull the curtain, the transparency of truth, pull the veil, and you will see, oh my God, we've been taken for a ride. Why are we terrorized? Why are we terrified? It's only them.
Yeah.
And they're using deception like this, these type of psychological operations to bury us, to deceive us, to make us look the other way, to divide and conquer, instead of us focusing in on what the real problem is and just pull it up with the root.
Hmm. It's great. Great information. So, did you want to share a little bit before we sign off of what you did in uh, Africa, or is that
Okay.
for another show?
No, it's up to you. Maybe better for another show. I think let's
Okay.
stay on track here.
Yeah, this was a lot of information. Yeah, everyone loves it. Good
Please,
chat.
but please go to lightonconspiracies.com. I know that I'm throwing out a lot of names there. Every single name has taken me years to track down. So I'm
Mm,
not pointing out this easily. I'm just not throwing a lot of names at you.
decades of
There's
work. Yeah.
decades, and I've written this book, Coup d'etat in slow motion, part one and part two. It's the same book, but it would just be too thick because it's almost 1,000 pages.
Hmm.
And in it, I point out with names and positions and all of these things, and also the connections to other assassinations that is connected to the same group there. So
Wow.
when James Files speaks, please listen, and let's wish him good health. And Pamela, also, these people have paid a high price to step forward to stay in truth. My God, they've been mangled by life and family
Yeah.
and so-called friends. They've been betrayed. They've been
Mm,
attacked. You have to salute people like that and help them get the message out there.
yeah. Now, what's amazing about your work, Ole, is you have James Files who has a lot of information, but like you said, compartmentalization, and because you have worked with lots of different people that were in their little compartment, the other people didn't know anything about them. So you have brought this work to life like no one else has. So kudos to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Coming from you, that really warms my heart. And I agree. But this is where we're all important, because I need the information from the compartmentalized pieces
Yeah.
from the inside, and then I can put together the jigsaw puzzle, like you say, like no one else. I really believe that. And I think
Because of
that
your
for many,
background, if James Files released, you'd be like, and just, and, wow, your work would blow up. It'd be amazing.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But this information has not come easily. Many people have died.
Oh yeah.
Many people, they've tried to keep this shut down and covered up for decades and decades, and so many people have got their lives destroyed and died on us,
Hmm.
and researchers have been, I mean, many people, including Jim Morris, this beautiful individual. If you ask me, he died
Yeah.
under strange circumstances. I just lost another friend here, Ulf Bittner in Sweden, who's like an incredible man to stand up in the name of truth, and then he died because he had been mistreated by doctors, or given the wrong treatment. And I mean, I don't know what is what.
Mm.
Cody Snodgrass is another one that just should be applauded also, who also died because he was taken out in a slow way. there's so many people that I'm grateful to that have helped this puzzle coming to fulfillment. So
Yeah.
let's use this information for good.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, Ole. Thanks so much, and thanks for everybody that joined us. And we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you. Thank you.